Hi, how you doing, everybody? I'm still reviewing all the X-Men movies, and even I, a person who did not know a lick of X-Men Wolverine content before watching these movies, even I knew that X-Men Origins Wolverine was, like, bad. But the opening bit of this movie is colonial America, where I guess Wolverine originally came from, and he goes through a montage of all the wars, every war. He was there just kicking ass, and he's alongside his brother Sabretooth, who was a character in the other movie, and we're not going to address that, and he looks completely different. He's recasted. Yeah, there's some recasting. There's some retcons. At this point, it might as well be in its own alternate universe, you know, because it doesn't really matter. This movie does not matter. It doesn't affect the future movies in any kind of way. It's just, hey, money. And if you guys watch my other X-Men series reviews, you'll know I'm not like the biggest fan of Wolverine. I thought, as far as like the main character that everyone hyped him out to be, he just wasn't that interesting to me. He wasn't like that entertaining. I didn't find big, sexy Hugh Jackman arms anything all that special. That being said, he is the backbone of this movie. And if anything, Hugh Jackman is at half capacity here. In the other movies, he was a little unlikable. In this movies, he's not even registering a pulse. Right around the time you stop caring about this movie is when there's this big action set piece. Will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas starts showing up, and then you see this whole entourage of Wolverine's like old crew, like when he was a bad boy. These are the evil guys that he did evil things with back in the day, which was preluded to in X-Men 2, but they kind of just drop it in this. And we're introduced to characters like Ryan Reynolds playing Wade Wilson. We'll talk about him later, but at this point you start to notice that the effects aren't as good as the other movies. There's a lot more CGI, and this was like in a weird point in time in cinemas where CGI is starting to replace everything, but we don't have like the budget or the talent to make it last the whole movie, but we're still trying to make it last the whole movie. And the script is not there. There's probably at least a dozen major plot holes, especially with Wolverine's girlfriend, but we'll talk about that later. And it's an origin film, but like I don't feel like I got to know Wolverine all that much more anyway. It just feels like we did like a really long side quest where he became a Canadian and had a girlfriend for a while. And then we learn how he got his bones turned into claws and the other things that could have been just explained and probably had the same emotional effect. And I know I didn't like the other X-Men movies as much as some people did, but at least there is a cast, and I could latch on to a couple of characters. I really liked, Magneto, Xavier, Storm, blah, blah, blah. With this one, I couldn't find a single person to care about. The entire cast, all of his friends, who am I supposed to fuck with? The Blob? No, there's not a single person in this film that is likable or interesting, and what little plot threads that they do set up, like him and his girlfriend, they just toss out the gutter. I kind of like the bad guy. He's just evil bad guy who's trying to take as many mutant powers as he can for himself and just experiment them into other things. And yeah, that's all right, I guess. But what it amounts to is Deadpool. And, I know Deadpool wasn't as beloved maybe back then. I guess I wasn't around as much, but like, people know Deadpool's face a lot better nowadays, I feel like, and how there isn't just a rallying cry the moment this like thing went into production. I don't know how. It's the most obvious bad decision I've ever seen, and it does not work. It makes for a piss poor villain, and Ryan Reynolds, as Deadpool could work, as we've seen before, but the way they handle it, what he turns into, it feels very indicative of how I feel in the movie, because he's just this lifeless husk of a thing, just flinging himself in any direction, just doing whatever he's told to do. He's a zombie. And this movie makes me feel like a zombie. Like I said before, it took place in that weird year where there's too much CGI, and it also took place when we gotta shake the fucking camera in every direction. There is not a single action scene that is interesting. If it was, you can't see it. And if you could, and then there's still probably some CGI in there, which is just gonna ruin it anyway. And while we're on the topic of like bad technology in this film, Xavier shows up at the very end of the film and he's de-aged and the technology was not there. I didn't know that they were trying to do it this early. De-age Xavier looked pretty good in X3. This one, not so much. I don't like looking at it. Then you have other plot holes, like they have Cyclops captive and they don't want Cyclops and Wolverine to meet because obviously they meet later. So they put a blindfold on him, but like he needs to get out of his cell. So just take the blindfold off for a second. Like why couldn't they get some kind of contraption that stops him from using his powers? Then he could be blindfolded and he's stuck where he's at. And let's just talk about the other elephant in the room. Wolverine has a girlfriend, and he's with her for like years. They're married, right? They get married, I think. She's tied into the origin of why he's called the Wolverine, which is cheesy as hell how they handle that. But yeah, he has a girlfriend. They're really hitting it off. And then she dies, and Wolverine, the whole movie is on a quest for revenge. And then boom, it turns out his girlfriend was actually working for the bad guys as a rat. And her superpower is to influence people. So instead of like using her expertly to do exactly what the bad guy wants to do, they just have her be a spy for someone that we're gonna handle like 6 years from now or something like that. And there's probably 20 other times they could have used her effectively, but they save her for this big dramatic reveal, and none of it makes sense. And her motivation, because she's being forced to do it, it's just wonky. Like I said, the script isn't there. The dialogue gets pretty bad at some points. All of that being said, I don't hate this film. I know I just dunked on it that entire review, but there's actually some merits to this film. Like I said, Wolverine is the main lead, so there's definitely more of a push for him to be like interesting, and Hugh Jackman doesn't seem to care all that much, but as far as some of the things he's doing, like I like the fact that we got Wolverine in the spotlight, and I care a little bit more about him than I did before this movie. The same thing with Sabretooth, man. I found him interesting at certain parts. He has some cheesy lines, but you have to take this film as a cheesy movie at this point. Like, there's this bit with Wolverine hanging out with this old couple, and there's no reason for them to let him into the house and, like, be a little refuge there. But they do, and then they die. And did I mention spoilers? Yeah, they die, and there's like this weird scene with Wolverine, like his claws look so bad, but he can't control them right yet, so he's just slicing up everything around him. I don't know, there's some bits in this film that I actually liked, and, you know, if you really hate this movie, but you really like X-Men 1, to me, in my brain, there's not this huge difference or gap. Like, they're the same level of cheesy action films, but maybe that's just me. I'm gonna give X-Men Origins Wolverine, that's a title, a light 5 out of 10. Probably never gonna watch it again in my life. I can successfully dump this from my memory banks, but if you are unable to do that and want to talk about this movie down below in the comments, please do so and watch my other X-Men movie reviews. Thank you as always for watching, and until next time, with that, I leave you.